fangirls and boys, this is Natalie and you're watching Whole Lotta Love. And for today's video I wanted to talk about my favorite drugstore products at the moment. I have a lot of stuff to talk about. I have a lot of eyeshadows, a lot of lip products. I'm really excited about these. A lot of these are products that rival anything that you see at Sephora, anything high-end. These are just really good products. So if you are interested in seeing some of my recommendations and loves of drugstore products, then keep on watching. So the first products that I would like to talk about are foundations. I wanted to bring up a couple of foundations which are two of my all-time favorite foundations. So the first one I want to talk about is the LA Girl Pro Cover High Definition Longwear Illuminating Foundation. So this foundation is really dewy. It says it's an illuminating foundation. It is a very illuminating foundation. It's also a very, not sticky, but slick kind of foundation where it definitely needs to be set, or else if you touch your face or rub against something with your face, it's going to move around pretty easily. So it definitely needs to be set. And another thing about this foundation is that the shade range is not too great. They do have this white version of the foundation. So what I do is I mix the lightest shade that I was able to get, which is the fair shade, which is more of a true light shade, not really a fair shade by any definition. I usually take this and I will mix a drop or two of the white to get my color, because I'm typically a fair light foundation color. So I'm just going to swatch it on the back of my hand here. So that is the foundation on the back of my hand. As you can see, it's not quite my skin tone, and it's also very slick. It is wet still, but it kind of maintains that wetness on your face. Doesn't really dry down at all. It is really beautiful. It's very dewy. It's just that super glowy looking foundation. And something else that's really good about this foundation, which is kind of the true test to me with foundations, where foundations I will either like them or really hate them, is that it wears really well. I feel like most foundations look pretty good upon initial application, but a lot of them will break apart or what have you, kind of patch up throughout your wear time. But this foundation, with the few foundations that I truly love, this foundation just wears really beautifully. It kind of maintains that dewiness to it. It doesn't really change in terms of the finish, and it doesn't really wear off too much. It maintains the pigment, and it's just very beautiful. The next foundation that I wanted to talk about is the Wet n Wild Mega Cushion Foundation, SPF 15, which is nice. It has an SPF to it. I have the shade Light Ivory. I've been applying it with a beauty blender, so this is what it looks like right here. This foundation is really beautiful. It's amazingly light. That's what I love about this foundation. It's a very light texture on the face. Like, you don't really feel like you're wearing anything on the face, and it doesn't look heavy at all. You can kind of see it right there on the back of my hand. It gives you like a light, you might be able to build it up to like a light medium type of coverage, so you're not getting a lot of full coverage, which is to be expected with a cushion foundation. But the coverage is definitely there. It definitely smoothed out the complexion really nicely. One thing that I will say about this foundation is that for a cushion, it's not, for me, I didn't really find it to be too dewy or illuminating or luminous. I feel like it's not a matte finish. It's kind of like a realistic finish, but it's not going to give you a lot of moisture. I feel like you definitely need to prime with a moisturizing primer and set your face with something that's kind of like an illuminating or kind of setting spray, something that's going to add moisture back into the skin, because I don't find that the Wet n Wild one really gives that to you. But again, it definitely stands the test of time. It wears really amazingly throughout the day. It has your skin looking like perfected, natural, beautiful skin for the entire wear time. So that's like for me, typically a good 8 to 10 hours. So the next product I want to talk about is the Milani Everyday Eyes eyeshadow palettes. So these eyeshadow palettes have 6 eyeshadows in them. I find at the drugstore that's one thing that's really lacking. The drugstore, everybody says it's been stepping up, and I agree with certain things. They really have been. Some of these foundations came out in the past year or so that I just talked about. They're really nice, really stepped up, pretty much like high end. But I feel like with eyeshadows, there's still a long ways to go at the drugstore. I find most brands L'Oreal, Maybelline especially, etc. They just can't step it up with the eyeshadows. But Milani seems to have always had them in spades. They've had those, what were they called? They were like the gel, it wasn't really a gel, it was a powder eyeshadow. It was like Bella Eyes or something like that. It was singles, eyeshadow singles. I remember those were really beautiful. I don't know if they still have those. Those were really cool. But now they have these eyeshadow palettes. These are the two latest ones that they came out with. This is the must-have metallics, and this is the basic mattes. I find that these eyeshadows, in addition to being the best ones at the drugstore, they really are as good, if not rival, an Urban Decay or a Too Faced eyeshadow. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch out some of these metallics. These metallics are really beautiful. You don't need to wet them, but when you do wet them, they really take it to the next level. I wore this red shade on the bottom wet, and I just couldn't stop looking at my eyes. I just felt like it was such a beautiful, intense foiled sheen on my lid. So those are some of the metallics in the must-have metallics palette. I'll also swatch some of the mattes. The mattes, you know, really nice as well. Very smooth application. Not the most intensely pigmented, but there's nothing lacking in the pigmentation. They're really nice. So those are the mattes at the bottom right there. And I'll swatch one more of the mattes. Do the black. You can see even that black is pretty rich in pigmentation. It's not, you know, turning into a gray really. I really love these palettes. I think this is a great, you know, neutral matte palette, the most basic if you just want to have one thing to travel with or something like that. This is the perfect palette. This is also a great accent palette. I also have some of the older ones that they came out, some of the original everyday eyeshadow palettes that they came out with were the Earthy Elements, which is really pretty. This is like a nice warm tone palette. And then the Smoky Essentials, which is also really, really nice. And they also have like a plum tone one, a more neutral one. So they have definitely like a nice color range. And again, I feel like these eyeshadows are just amazing for the drugstore, and they're the best that they have at the drugstore. So the next products I want to talk about are blushes. So I have two different blush formulas here. The first one I want to talk about is the LA Girl Just Blushing blushes that I have here. I have the shades Just Rosy and Just Natural. So this is Just Natural. This is like your perfect kind of peachy pink, neutral, goes with everything blush. I'll swatch this. So I find that these are, if like you're a real blush lover. So these are like, the pigment is kind of high on these. It's not like some formulas are like really sheared out and you can build them and they're really beautiful like that. I feel like with these LA Girl ones, you're getting a fair amount of pigment right off the bat. It's a little more pigment than some of my favorite blushes right off the bat, but they blend out really, really beautifully. And it's not like too much pigment. It's not like you're gonna put like a little dusting and you're gonna have clown cheeks. It's kind of like a mid pigmentation, but you could really build it up to have a really intense blush if you like. So they're like very punchy blushes, and this is Just Rosy right here. So that's Just Rosy swatched out on my hand. I also have Just Rosy on my cheeks right now. You can see I have a kind of an intense blush look going on, but I really like it. That's what I was going for. And again, these blend out really nicely. You can use a little bit of lighter hand if you want it more sheared out, but if you want that intense blush look, these will definitely give it to you, and they're not going to go patchy or anything like that. These are really, really beautiful. I eventually want to get all of these. The next one I want to talk about is the Burt's Bees blush. These just came out as well. I only have one shade. I want to pick up the other two eventually. They're a little more on the pricier side. I'll list all the prices of all these products and, you know, the names of all the products in my description box. I'm sorry I didn't look up the prices for the video. I'll definitely provide that information. So this blush again is the Burt's Bees blush in the shade Bare Peach. So this is like a nice straight up peach kind of satin blush. It's not shimmery or matte. I would say it's satiny. So this one is, unlike the LA Girl ones, this one is a lighter pigmentation. So this is like a sheer blush that you can build out. So this is the Burt's Bees one. And then upon the cheeks, that's one thing that's really nice about it. So if you want to go in, you're kind of in a rush, you want to have just like a light color on your cheeks and you don't want to have to worry about putting the right amount. You can have like just a very light layer, you can build it up. They go on very smoothly, they blend really well, so I really like these. It's kind of a nice like lit from within blush, just like barely there, or you could build it up, make it a little more noticeable, but just very natural, very, very natural looking blush. So I really like this Burt's Bees blushes. And of course, the next product we have to talk about is highlighter. So my most favorite highlighter, one of my most favorite highlighters, period, but definitely at the drugstore, is this E.L.F. one. It's called Illuminating. I believe it's from their Beautifully Bare line. I could be wrong about that. I do apologize. They completely lack with a lot of their products putting the actual name on the product itself, which is kind of odd, but what can you do? So this is basically a liquid highlight. One thing I will say about these is that they do separate, so if you kind of have it in your drawer and they've settled, you might squeeze it in, like you'll just have like that oily liquid come out, but then if you give it a good shake, it's fine. These, so I'm going to swatch it out right here. This, I'm wearing it on my cheeks right now underneath something else, which I'm going to get into in a minute. So this is a heavier swatch of it right there. And what I really think is like really special about this, and what I really like about it, it's a champagne-y color. It's pretty typical highlight color. This highlight has this glossiness to it. I think it has like an element of oil. There has to be some kind of oil in it, especially because when it settles and you try to squeeze it, like what comes out I think is just oil. So if you're not into that, then yeah, these aren't going to be something that you like. But for me, this is, I just love that like little bit of oil like consistency to it, because it comes off really glossy on the cheek. So it does have that element of, oh, you know, like this, my face is just catching the light, that natural element to it. So it's kind of in between of something very blinding and something pretty natural. It has like aspects of both, but it definitely has that glossy element, which I think is pretty unique to it. So the next highlighter I want to talk about is this palette by Flower Beauty. This is the Shimmer and Strobe highlighting palette by Flower Beauty. I know a lot of people on YouTube talk about this, and for good reason. So this is what I have layered more towards the top of my cheekbone on top of the E.L.F. And what I really like about this palette is that it has a very smooth finish to it. So I'm gonna swatch these three shades here. There's a champagne-y shade in the middle, even though it's the first one in the palette. There's a champagne-y shade, a golden shade, which I have up top here, and then a pinky shade in the palette. So these are really pretty. They give a very nice sheen to the skin. They are somewhat metallic blinding, but it's not a super metallic, and it's not glittery. So these are very like shimmery rather than glittery, and they're very, very smooth looking. Some highlights I find are really pretty, but they look a little bit chunky on the cheek. The powderiness of them, or just like the metallic shimmers, make it look a little bit chunkier, but this just has such a beautiful smooth application. The E.L.F. one I really love, but since it is a liquid, you know, if you put a little too much, it might kind of gather up, and it gathered a little bit. I mean, it usually doesn't do that, but then when I put this over it kind of sparingly, and it just smoothed everything out. I feel like the application now looks smoother, it looks brighter. So these two layered together is really pretty, but either of these products alone is really beautiful as well. I forgot a couple of products in the eye category, so I'm going to circle back to those, and then I will finish off with the lip products. I also have here a brow pencil. So this is pretty new to me. This is the Maybelline Total Temptation Brow Definer. The one I have is in the shade Soft Brown. So this has an interesting shape that I haven't quite seen before. It's similar to the Anastasia. I think that one's also called the Brow Definer. They pretty much bit that off. The actual shape of it is pretty unique. So I'm not sure if you could see that, but it's like a diamond shape. It's not just angled, and it's pretty nice. I like this formula. I like it because, I'll kind of swatch it out here. I'm wearing it in my brows now. I have the Hourglass Arch brow gel over it, which I'm really loving. I just recently got that, but I think it's going to be a new favorite. That's a really amazing product. But I have the brow definer underneath to initially fill in my brows, and I've really been liking this even on its own. I find that it's a good, I think a lot of people would like this because it's a good medium between something that is waxier and drier, not as pigmented, and something that's creamier and more pigmented. I feel like it's kind of a hybrid. It has the pigmentation, has the creaminess, but it's not super pigmented, it's not super creamy. It has some of that dry waxiness that's gonna prevent you from going too crazy too quickly. And I think that this little spoolie at the end is really cute, and it doesn't bother me. There's nothing about this that's problematic. It's a good spoolie for its purpose. So I think this, and I love this peachy pink packaging. So I think this is definitely a win from the drugstore. Again, this is the Total Temptation Brow Definer by Maybelline. Another honorable mention, because it's kind of newer, is the Total Temptation Mascara by Maybelline. So this one just came out with that brow pencil and the palette as well that they came out with. So this is what the brush looks like on the Total Temptation. So it has like a nice perfumey scent. I always think it's nice when mascara has that scent to it. It's just kind of cool because it's like right near your nose when you're applying it. So it has a little bit of a floral scent to it, which I think is nice. I feel like this gives you kind of like intense volume. It's almost a little bit of that clumpy look to it. So if you hate that, then you won't like this, but it's not super spidery or anything like that. It's just kind of giving you a lot of thickness, a lot of volume, very black. It might be a little bit irritating. That was the only thing I didn't love about it. I felt like it was kind of like, if a little bit got in my eye, it would kind of irritate it a little bit. So the formula is not necessarily for sensitive eyes, but I do like the way that this looks. Okay, so we made it to the last category, which is lips. I have a ton of lip products here to talk about. So the first one I want to talk about, which is what I'm wearing on my lips right now, are the Maybelline Superstay Matte Ink lip colors, liquid lipsticks. These kind of get mixed reviews, and I could see why. But I just recently got, the first shade that I got was the shade Poet. I just got one to see if I would like it, and I absolutely loved it. And I had to get more shades. So the shade that I'm wearing right now is called Driver. This is like a warm tone light nude. So Maybelline recently put out a bunch of new shades of these, and that's one thing that I really do love about these is the shade range. Now that it's been expanded, I feel like they have an amazing shade range. They have like a lot of really, they have like, I would say 3 or 4 really light nudes, which I really like, that are really flattering nudes. And then they have like kind of like a grapey, gragey kind of color, which I thought was really cool in the newer line. They have like a berry tone color. Again, I'm wearing this one on my lips. This is called Driver. It's just that light warm tone nude. That swatch is kind of a mess, but I just love how flattering these look on the lips. So this is the first one that I got in Poet. I think this is my favorite. This is just such a flattering, peachy pink nude kind of color. That's Poet right there. And you can see compared to Driver, Driver is just a little bit more of a, you know, beigey warm tone nude, and this one is more of a pinky peachy nude, the Poet. What I love about these is the intensity of the staying power. So if you put this on, you can eat anything you want that's oily or anything like that, and it's gonna stay on your lips. It's gonna look pretty much perfect all day long. It's not gonna come off until you want it to come off. You don't need to reapply it. I can't even honestly speak to whether it layers well or not because it's just so long wearing that I haven't really needed to reapply. Actually, I remember the last time I wore the Poet one, I did reapply it and it still looked beautiful. It didn't look like it was kind of collecting too much. So this is one of the other ones from the newer line. This one's called Ruler. So this is like one of my kind of definitely go-to kind of colors. This is like a rosy, bricky rosy, muted kind of color. Muted, I guess you could say red, reddish pink kind of color. So that's Ruler. That's a really beautiful color as well. And the original launch, they did have all like bright colors. So I saw one I think I want to get as well that was like, I don't know what that shade is called, but it was like that bright red orange kind of color. They had like a bright purple, true red. You know, I would love to have that whole line eventually. And I think one thing that really stands out with those is the shade range now that it's been expanded. So I just also wanted to show the applicator a little bit better. So it's like one of those, I guess like a teardrop applicator with that little divot in the middle. but it's straight. It doesn't have like a curve to it. Like it doesn't bend. It's just straight with that. And I find it's a very nice application on the lips, very smooth. It's a little bit sticky throughout its wear, but it's, to me, it's comfortable. It doesn't make it, it's not too drying, but it's just gonna, it's not gonna go away. It's hard to take off. That's the only real con I would say about this, but it's, I feel like the wear looks beautiful throughout it. Another one I wanted to point out, and I think these companies are like, I think maybe L'Oreal owns Maybelline or something like that, and I feel like these formulas are probably nearly identical. And this, I'm not sure which formula came out first. I want to say it was the L'Oreal, but it could have been the Maybelline. These ones haven't had as much fanfare. This is the L'Oreal Infallible Pro Matte Liquid Lipstick. And this one I have is called Shakedown. The one thing I will say about these is that I didn't like the shade range as much. I don't know if they've expanded or maybe I wasn't aware of the entire shade range. I found it was like a lot of like mid-tone colors. So they had like mid-tone colors done well. They didn't have any really light nudes. I guess they did have some vampy colors, but it was just kind of a limited shade range. So this is the shade Shakedown. It's a similar wand. It's a little more of a triangular tear shape. Has that same divot, but it has that curve that I was talking about. The Maybelline goes straight across. This one kind of has a curve. I find the applicator on the Maybelline one works a little bit better. But I feel like these formulas are very similar. If anything, if they're not exactly the same, the L'Oreal one might be like a little more vinyl-like. It says it's matte, but I feel like it has more of like almost like a vinyl finish where it has like a slight sheen to it, but it's like that, it adheres to your lips like nothing else. It's the same thing. You wear it as long as you want to, and you have to, it's hard to take off. It doesn't come off until you want to forcibly take it off. So that's the shade Shakedown. And the next one I have here is called Roseblood. This is a pretty shade. They did bring out some cool like mid-tone colors. Like they have like a gray, they have like grayish colors, they have like those warm mauve colors, but again, from what I saw, they were all kind of mid-tone. So that's the Roseblood shade. And these are the L'Oreal, and the first three are the Maybellines. So I feel like these formulas are quite similar. And I really like those a lot. So these are pretty intense. As I mentioned, they're not coming off for anything unless you take them off. I did want to mention some lighter options in case that's just not your thing. So the first one I'm going to mention is the Physicians Formula Healthy Lip Velvet Finish. So this is a liquid lipstick. It does dry down. At first when I got these and based on what I've heard about them, I didn't think they were going to dry down. I thought it was going to be like something that was kind of moussey. And they are a little bit moussey, but they definitely have like a little bit of a dry down, which I do appreciate. I do like a dry down. And this shade I'm swatching here is called Bear With Me. So that's the Physicians Formula Bear With Me right there. And this has like a dry down, but there's a lightness to it on the lips. It's not like the Maybelline or the L'Oreal where it's just adhering to your lips like glue and not coming off until you want it to come off. This one will like wear off gracefully and it will come off more easily, and it's much lighter on the lips. So that was the shade Bear With Me. I have one more shade here to show, which is the Tulip Treatment. And it's spelled out like T-U lip, which is funny. So that's Tulip Treatment on the bottom by Physicians Formula. Again, like with the L'Oreal, I think the con to these, and again, both of those, they might bring out more shades, but from what I could see, the shade range in these was a little bit limited. I think this was the lightest color, at least in the store, this was the lightest color. It's like the nude, Bear With Me, but I feel like this is more of a coral, like a light coral, and this one is more of a bright coral. So I felt like a lot of these shades leaned into that coral berry direction, like the kind of mid-tone coral berries. I didn't find there weren't really any nice light nude shades. I didn't really see the true vampy colors or the true red colors. So again, a little bit limited. Just the Maybelline with their expanded range, I think, has like a full, really awesome range. But definitely these wear a lot lighter on the lips. So that's a good option. They're kind of more natural, flattering colors as well. So I think, and it's a very nice formula. It has a dry down, so it's not something that's going to slip and slide everywhere. It's a good liquid lipstick. And the last lip product I wanted to talk about, which was the E.L.F. Alyssa Ashley collaboration. This is just a lip gloss, and it's in the shade Nude Rose. This smells really good. It's like that kind of vanilla frosting kind of scent. It's pretty strong. So I'm just gonna swatch this one here since I have crazy swatches everywhere. And what I like about this is that it's hella pigmented. It's like full pigment lip gloss, but it's a very smooth wear. It's not something that's like sitting on your lips that's really gloppy with a lot of pigment that's going everywhere. It kind of sinks into the lips a little bit, but you're getting that full pigment. So if you have it like with a lip liner, it's just gonna be like a nice full lip color. And I think the packaging said this is supposed to work with like a wide range of skin tones, and I find that it does. I feel like on deeper skin tones, this might be a nice kind of natural your lips but better. And I don't know if, yeah, I guess it could be like a nude for like a deeper skin tone. Just definitely your lips but better. For me, it has like a little bit of a depth to it, so it's kind of a darker color for me to wear, but it's still very pretty, very flattering, and very pigmented. So I really like this. I want to actually explore to see if E.L.F. has any of this formula in like other shades, because this is like a really cool formula and I really like that. And again, it's a gloss if you don't want anything intense like these liquid lipsticks. That completes my rundown of my favorite products from the drugstore. They all rival high-end products, so I would definitely recommend. And as you could see, there was a ton of stuff. There's a lot of really good stuff at the drugstore. There are a lot of duds as well, so if you're interested in seeing some of my drugstore disappointments, let me know. Yeah, that completes this rundown and this video. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe. Have a good one. Bye, guys.